Welcome back to the third part of this project. In the last part, we looked at models and we saw the models for our tax manager project. We learned about the user model, which is built in from Django, and we also looked at the project model and the tax model. In this part, we'll be looking at converting these models to serializers. And the serializers basically help us present this data. That's the data in the models, which are tables, just like we've said already, into a format that is consumable. Because eventually your APIs, will be consumed by another service, right? Take, for instance, a React app, a Vue app, or another service elsewhere. Right, so it would present it in a very good format, basically mainly JSON, but it can also be in another format, but mainly JSON, right? And that is what API development is all about. Okay, so we're going to be exiting this shell, right? We're going to be exiting this shell, and we're going to create in this project um, app, the serializers module. So this is serializers. So you can see I've done that already, and we have the serializers.py. Now, I'm just going to paste some code here and I'll explain them gradually. Right? So, okay, not this. Just give me a minute. Let me do that again. Okay. So here we have our serializers module, and you can see this is where REST framework now comes into play. That's Django REST framework, right? We've already added this to the apps. Let me show you again in our settings. You can see REST framework, so it is there already, right? So we're importing serializers from REST framework, and from the models, we're importing the project and the tax. I believe this is good. Also, line 3, I believe you understand it already. Now, we created our user serializer. This would serialize the user model, basically the user model, ID, username, and email, right? This is the fields that would be shown and serialized. For the project serializer, now you can see here we have a field called owner. Don't forget in the project, there's a field called owner, so don't get it twisted. Now, this is going to be a read-only field, right? We don't want it to be a writable field because anyone can just, write to it. But if it's read-only, they can only see it. That's read only, right? And this is going to give us just the username. That means the username of the owner of that project, right? Remember, we just have one user, in this case, which is the super admin, and his username is admin. So in this case, the owner will be showing admin. Then other fields include the ID, the name, description, the owner, and the created at. This one is the automatically added field, which is the date time, right? So this owner just basically means we want it to be read only. That's why we're doing this here, right? Then the other thing we are serializing is the tax model. As you can see here, we are serializing this. Now, this also assigned to, we're making it read only so that someone cannot just manually edit it. You can only see it and read from it, but you can't change it, right? You can't change it. That's what we're trying to achieve here. Now, the fields that we're serializing, basically all the fields, the ID, like I said again. So this ID is very important so that anyone who is consuming can know what particular data they are consuming. So that's why the ID is important. And this is the primary key. We talked about it. It's the primary key. And this comes automatically when you create that model. Django does it internally, except you want to explicitly call another field or make another field your primary key. So all the fields we have in our models is what we are serializing. And we made some fields to be read only. That is just what we are doing here. So with this now, we have serialized our models, right? You can see we just created a serializers file or module. It's called, we call the module. Then we serialized the module. So this will convert all the data in the table, that's the model, to JSON format, which is the popular format when it comes to API development. Now, one other thing I want us to do, this is not compulsory, but it's just something we can also look at, is to validate the name, the project name. This would help with what we call integrity, right? Data integrity. So in this project serializer, I'm going to come here and add a function, a method, basically. And you can see here, this method validates name. It has one parameter, right? And you can see a value. We know self is default. Now, if not value.strip, right, it's going to raise an error, validation error. Project name cannot be empty. So what we're just saying here is the what's it called? The name. You know it is returning the name, right? It cannot be empty. So if it's empty, then it's going to return this error, right? So if we give out this API, this endpoint, and whoever is consuming it is sending an endpoint and does not have a value for that field, raise this error. That's what I'm trying to say here, right? That's just all we're saying here. Now, having done this now, we are going to look at this. Now, I'm going to run this on the, what's it called? Sorry, please. We need to create our URLs. Remember we talked about the URLs which will help us access these endpoints. They are routes basically, right? They are routes. Now, let me just see this here. We have our serializers. There's one more thing I think I want us to do before we go to the route. We have to go to the views. Yes, our views. This is where we write the logic. Don't forget, Django is an VT architectural paradigm, right? But in this case, the T is not there. That is the template because the front end, which is React in this case, will undo that. So we are just focusing on the models and the views. So the views is where you write your business logic, the processes, right? So yeah, we don't need to render because we're not doing any front end here. We're just working on the back end, solely on the back end. So what we're going to do is we are going to import some important components in REST framework, that's in Django REST framework, that would help us to um, make this easier. Sorry, let me just do this again. I'm just going to put in some code here and I'll explain it for us. Okay, let me just type it from REST framework. REST framework import serializers. Okay, we've done serializers, so import generics. Then we're going to import permissions from REST framework dot permissions. I'm going to import is authenticated. Then we're going to import our models from this models. Dots means this, don't forget, from this dot models. We are importing the project and also import the task. Right? The one more thing we import are serializers from this dot means this, like this project directory. This dot serializers. We're going to import what, let me check the name again. Project serializer, then task serializer. Import project serializer, then task serializer. Yeah. I think this is good. We're good to go here. We've imported the necessary thing. So generics is a way for us to create these APIs. That's the endpoint, right? So if you call them APIs, call them endpoints, similar, still the same. Now, here we have what we call the list create API view. Now, it's important to know that there are other ways to create APIs, but using generics framework makes it easier. Really, really makes it easier for you, right? So this endpoint, now what this does is you can list the projects, that's all any how many projects you have, then you can also use it to create new ones, right? So it's like killing two birds with a stone. So now query sets, which is a variable name, project.object.all. We are getting every object, all the projects, right? Storing it here. Then serializer class, project serializer, which we've imported, that's like we're serializing it. Permission classes here we are saying is authenticated. Now, what this means is um, if you are not authenticated, that if you're not an authenticated user, you cannot have access to this project, right? You have to be authenticated for you to have access to it. That's what it means, basically. Now, get query set, right? You can see the comment, only return projects owned by the logged in user. So return projects.object.filter owner is equals to self.request.user. Now, don't forget, owner is a field in the project model, right? Let me show you. So if you scroll, you see there's owner here. Don't forget, right? And as you can see, it's a foreign key that is tied to the user model. So what we are doing here is this. We are saying return only the project that belongs to the owner of that project. That means if multiple people are logged in, user A, user B, user C are logged in, user A will only see project that he or she created. User B cannot see projects that user A created, right? That is what this is all about. Now, if you don't want this to be there, definitely you won't just put this. You will just probably just return project.object.all. So the time we list, all the projects will be showing, irrespective of who created it. But if you want to put that restriction so that only um the project created by the owner should be shown, then you would put this also to filter it. Then perform create. This definitely creates. You can see you automatically assign logged in user as the owner, right? So if we create a project, then the owner of that project will be the logged in user. I don't know if you get the explanation. If we create a project now, there's a field called owner. So it will go and check request.user. It will request the user that is logged in at that moment in time, right? So it would get the ID of that user and save it in the owner field. That's what this does, right? So that is this particular endpoint. So we can call this, let me just put this here, and I'll give it a name. I'll say list create endpoint, basically. So the endpoint and views. So we have another one. This generics framework makes it easier, especially since we are using class-based view. Like I said, there are other ways you can do this, but we'll just stick with this. This is very, very easier for makes you write less codes. Now, this one, what this does is it retrieves. That's the retrieve, update, destroy. The name, kind of tells you what it does already. It retrieves, it updates. You can update a data, then you can delete. That destroy basically means delete, right? So you can delete a project, right? This one you can list and create project endpoint. Yeah. So retrieve, update, and delete project endpoint. So these are just this is not really an endpoint, but these are the what's it called? Yeah, these are the views, but we'll just make it the endpoint. The endpoint, I mean the route. So let me just remove this here because the route actually the endpoints, yeah, the main endpoint. Okay, I haven't done this now. So this is similar to what we have here, right? Retrieve, update, destroy API view. Query set, serializer class, raising the project serializer, permission classes. Definitely you have to be authenticated before you can do this. Then also, you cannot perform any of these actions except you are the owner of that project. That is what we are doing here, basically. There's no need to say create a perform create method because we are not creating a project. We are deleting, we are updating, or we are fetching that I'm getting a project, right? So that is this. So you can see we have just two um, view logic, right? If you're not using the generics, you'll probably be using the API view. Then you probably want to write them one by one, write a view to list, write a view to create, write another view to retrieve, write a view to update, write a view to delete. So you write more codes. But with this, like I see, we just have two major views, and we are doing a lot of things. We are doing a lot of things. We're doing a lot of things. Now, let's now look at the endpoint, right, which is the route. So the endpoint and the route, basically, we're going to have the get endpoint, which is to get a project. We're going to have the update, that's the put or the patch, then the delete, right? Then we're going to have the create if you want to create a project. So to do that, we'll need to create a module in this project. I'm going to call this urls.py. So in this urls.py, you can see we're importing paths from Django.urls, from Django.urls import path. Then from this.view, don't forget dot means views. From this.views, import project list create view, project detail view. That is this project list create view and this one also that we created here. So now you can see now, we now have a URL patterns, which is a list. So this is our endpoint. Path project. So if you come to the server address and you go to // project, you can have access to this view, right? Then you can also, if you come to this /project/int pk, don't forget the pk is the ID, primary key, and that's the ID. Remember we said when we created the models that automatically Django would create a primary key using the ID if you do not specify any primary key, right? So that is, and it's an integer. So that is why you can see. So if we say project/1, what are we saying? Project 1. Project/2 means project 2. Project/3 means project 3. And because they are an individual project, we can update, we can delete it, right? But for the first endpoint project, that one will list all the projects. Then we can also create a new one. Now, having done this, the next thing we need to do is to register these URLs in the config URLs. It's very important. It's very, very important. So in this config URL, we need to add it to it. So to do that, we can just come here and say path. Then we can say API / we can say include, we can say the project URLs. I think it's plural. Let me see, project.url. Yeah, so I'm going to add this include here, because we need to import it. So what are we doing here? What we are saying here is this. This is the root project. Don't forget the config app is the root project. So the app's URLs that we created, that's, the app is the project, right? This is the app. So we are going to register it in the root URLs, just like the models. We register the models in the settings. So we need to also register the URLs in the root URL so that it knows that, oh, if you want to come to this route, you have to first come to API, then project, because you can see API is here first. Then after that, you can now come to project and you'll be able to see your endpoint. You need to see your endpoint. Okay, so I haven't done this now. We are good to go. So I'm going to run my server now, my development server. Let me just go there. Right, I'm on the API run server. So if we look at this, we go to this route. Excuse me, please. We go to this route, then the what's it called again? This URL, API, right? Then we can now come to project. So let's quickly check that in our browser. Let's check that in our browser. Let me just quickly switch to that. So now I'm going to view the site. Right, you can see I'm still logged in as the super admin here. Now you can see that this is the default route. We are getting an error. Initially, when we did this, we didn't have an error. Remember, we didn't have an error. We're having the congratulations message. Congratulations, successful, Django successful. But because we've already specified these project URLs, and in the project URLs now, they are in the root URL, there are just two routes, admin and API, right? So if we come here and say API forward slash API forward slash, and we run this, we are going to have another error. Say page not found. That's because in the API route, don't forget what's an address. There's nothing that exists like this, just API. You have to come to either project, right? So I can say project, then forward slash. So if I do this, you can see what is happening. I'll be able to see all the projects that has been created by me. So I can see this project because I'm the one who created it. That's the super user, basically. Right? Let's say I'm signed in as someone else. I won't be able to see this project. I hope you're getting it. So I can see it now because it is the super admin that created it. You can see ID1. This ID1 is the project ID. Name, demo, project, description. You can see owner, admin. Right? So owner, admin, it is the admin. I can see I'm signed as an admin. Right? Now, this is the created as I mentioned earlier on. You can see the date, then the time. Now, it's also important that we'll be using another tool to check our endpoint, which is much better than the browser. So there are different tools to use. There is Insomnia and there is Postman, but we'll be using Postman for this. So if you don't have Postman, now will be a good time to download it. Right? It works for Unix. It also works for Windows. We can also test with Insomnia if you have the Insomnia software. So that is a very good way to test your endpoint. So you can see I'm logged as an admin, as you can see here on the right hand side. And this is a get request, as you can see. Get is a get request, right? And I just have just one project. So if I create another project and I do this here, you see it will list two projects. Because it's just one project, it's just one project that we have, right? So I haven't done this now. Let me see if I can just go to the Postman and run it again so you see. So if I should do that now, because I'm not signed in here, you might not get it very well, but we'll look at that shortly using Postman to view our endpoint. So if you get this, if you're able to get this, that's very good. You've done very, very well, right? You've done very, very well. What you can do now, you can just sign into your admin, create another project. You can create another project, then also you would, what's the word now? You can also create multiple projects and just run it and see how many projects would come out. You should have multiple projects, right? That would come out on this route, on this endpoint. So this is an endpoint basically, right? That's an endpoint. So you can see when we talk about endpoints or APIs, we're talking about these things here. So let's continue from where we stop. So you can see we've checked this project endpoint. Then we can also see projects um, /1, right? That will give us like the details, this view. So there we can update, we can delete, and then we can yeah, fetch basically, right? So that's about that. Now we'll stop here for now. Just try and add more projects using the super admin, right? When we come back in the next part, we'll now try to create another endpoint for the tax, right? We'll create the APIs for the tax. And if possible, you can just transfer, you can do it, similar to the way the project endpoint is, the views, we'll create the views, then we'll now add the endpoint in the URLs. So we'll stop here for now. And in the next part, we'll look at the tax endpoint. Thank you very much.